Good evening, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season hurricane outlook and discussion for December 3rd, 2020, recorded on 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Our first stop today looking at the global sea surface temperature anomalies, well, really the Western Hemisphere sea surface temperature anomalies. We can really see that right now we still have a very persistent La Nina taking place across the equatorial Pacific region. All of this blue here indicating well below normal temperatures, sea surface temperature wise, across, or really anomaly wise, across most of the equatorial Pacific. And this is what has shaped up the very busy 2020 Atlantic hurricane season, which is now thankfully over at this point in time. And meanwhile, in the Atlantic basin, we still are running several degrees above the long term average, uh, basically everywhere. However, you'll notice that some of these blue colors, if we kind of zoom in here on the map, we can see some of these blue colors, blue and gray colors, indicating the presence of near normal to just below average sea surface temperature wise. This is very important because, again, this is going to carry a lot of merit in towards the off season and towards the start of next year's hurricane season, which is only 6 months away, believe it or not. So we just ended one hurricane season, but we only have 6 more months until the next season. So we have still a long time yet, but before we know it, we'll already be there, and these sea surface temperatures are going to play a big part. These anomalies will be playing a big part in what we're talking about next year, whether it's a busy season again or whether we have a much slower season, like, some years like, 2012, etc., 2013, certainly. If those, years do come to, fruition, we'll see. So there's a lot of merit behind this. And right now, of course, it's still December 2nd. Today is December 3rd. This updated as of yesterday. So there's still a lot of time left, but this is something now that we're going to have to start watching very carefully each and every week from now all the way until June 1st, because this is really going to matter going forward in time. Now, aside from that, for the minute, this is the Madden-Julian oscillation. This basically corresponds to rising and sinking air, large-scale rising and sinking air in the atmosphere. And we can very clearly see where all the rising air is today over the Indian Ocean and Western Pacific basins. And then this will be translating eastward with time and across the Central and Eastern Pacific basin. But really and truly, again, this has no more merit in terms of the hurricanes, but this could, enhance certainly maybe some influence of additional upstream convection out across the western United States, maybe towards mid month. So, this is looking December 12th through the 18th. So, arriving about mid month, there could be enhanced precipitation kind of out here across the western United States with all this rising air coming in. So, something to just kind of keep an eye on. Maybe the potential for additional winter storms, severe weather across the south. We'll just have to see. Certainly something that's certainly very interesting at the moment. Now, if we want to talk about severe weather, well, we can see tomorrow's outlook, the day two forecast from the Storm Prediction Center, rather, does have two areas of marginal risk areas. One such area right across the Florida Panhandle, immediately along the coast. This is not going to be very far inland, but the threat does exist for a couple of isolated tornadoes, and we'll look at that here in a moment. There's also a risk across coastal Carolina, from South Carolina, from just about Charleston and Dorchester County northward, all the way up and through the Outer Banks near the Cape Fear area, and certainly Wilmington, North Carolina, etc., could see some severe weather potential there as well. And then looking forward in time, we could also have a very potent winter storm event shaping up across the northeastern United States within 48 hours. And we'll take a look at that briefly here in a moment. Now, if we look at the GFS forecast globally, or not globally, but continental United States wise, we can see the GFS forecast for 18Z today, valid as a 0Z tonight. We'll move this forward, and this is by tomorrow. So, the reason why there's a marginal risk is because an area of low pressure is expected to develop here. And if we kind of look at a sounding right ahead of this at 18Z, you'll notice that area of low pressure begins right around Tallahassee. And what you'll notice is that there is some instability to work with in the lowest levels. And believe it or not, that is a rather decent low level hodograph, although it does some weird stuff out here once you start getting past 3 kilometers. So there is some decent shear in the very low levels. You can see the wind coming out of the south, turning generally then towards out of the west with height, and then eventually kind of towards the northwest, so kind of west northwest. So with that being said, there definitely is some risk for tornadoes tomorrow, and that's why there's a conditional marginal risk right across the coastline here of the Florida Panhandle. Now, one other such area to watch will be coastal Carolina, and if you take a look at that, you can see that what it looks like here is a deepening area of low pressure out across parts of central North Carolina. This is about 1,003 millibars at the time. And you'll notice that there's a very tight gradient out here, a very tight pressure gradient. And usually that's going to be associated with some pretty strong low level wind. And you can really see that the wind out of the low levels here is generally, this is a non contaminated sounding, generally on the order of 15 to 20 knots at the first 0 to kind of 1 kilometer range is roughly at about 15 to 20 knots. And you can kind of see where that's located here. You've got about 15 knots of 15 knots of wind at surface, and then that dramatically you can see here that kind of curvature in the first 0 to 3 kilometer range. Storm motions will be rather quick too at for assuming a right moving supercell moving roughly at about 39 knots. So that's kind of looking up towards 45 miles per hour. So these storms will be moving fast. They'll be moving up towards the north and east as well with time. The instability here is the only one limiting factor, but LCL heights will be relatively low. We can actually see that even the lowest here at the surface, about 501, mid-level at 918. Typically, you want to see values that are under 1,000 for supercells and higher tornado potential. The LCL heights here really support the risk for some tornadoes. So I would not be surprised to see a couple of tornadoes squeak out here across portions of the Outer Banks and certainly even towards a little bit inland there over central Carolina. But certainly coastal areas are going to have the better chance for tornadoes because the dynamics with greater instability will be there. And then eventually this moves out across and towards the north and east. But this area of low pressure, according to the GFS, is pretty far offshore. And on the back side of that, now you're going to get some snow, kind of this bombogenesis, and down to 987 millibars. And we can actually see that this really dumps a tremendous amount of snow across portions of the northeastern United States back here in the cold sector. So certainly there does run a risk for that, and we will talk about that more in tomorrow's video. Now, real quickly looking forward, looking broad scale in terms of what we might be looking for with next hurricane season. Last time, when we did the update a couple of days ago on December 1st, we looked at the CFS, the Climate Forecast System models for the upcoming hurricane season. This is a different model. This is the canned ships model, and this is just a different climatology model, but we can see that this is valid 0 months. This is December 2020. We'll move this out here, and this goes by in months. We'll move this out to about April. And what you'll notice is that the canned SIPS model is still relatively forecasting this La Nina pattern to persist into April. And if that does, now notice we have a very warm subtropical Atlantic at this point. So this would definitely point towards some interesting stuff going on potentially for next hurricane season. But by the time we get into August and September, we can see that warmth start to focus down here. A neutral towards weak La Nina phase still exists. And if you actually look here at the 3-month precipitation forecast, this is really out towards June, July, or this is basically July, August, and September, basically. And you can see that what this really does is that this really paints the picture for a pretty strong West African monsoon and a strong African easterly wave train. Now, again, this is looking 9 months from now, so you're not going to get a lot of clarity in this forecast because, this is looking 9 months from now. But, even if we look here, at 5 months and we look out towards like May, we can see even the chances for above normal precipitation there, and sea surface temperatures will remain kind of neutral to right above average. So something interesting. Again, these models are going to be fine tuned over the next several months as we progress deeper into the off season, and then obviously closer towards the start again of the hurricane season, about 6 months. So we do have a lot to kind of keep in tabs on. Again, if you like these videos, make sure to like it. Make sure to also comment and share to people who you think might enjoy this as well. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Again, this is Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.